Hey, it's the real you calling. Welcome home. What would your life look like if you stopped second guessing yourself, stopped playing small, and finally broke free from the cycles that have kept you stuck? Well, that's what the Ignite Momentum Practicum is all about. It's a 6 week transformational coaching experience designed to help you break through people pleasing, self doubt, and codependency once and for all. And here's the best part, you get to choose your path. You can matriculate through the one on one accelerator. It's private, high touch coaching, you and me one on one. Weekly breakthrough calls, a custom action plan, deep mindset work, and real time support to help you reclaim your power and rebuild your confidence. Option two is the group intensive. This is where transformation meets community. Weekly live sessions with a cohort of like-minded individuals, hot seat coaching, Q&A, bonus trainings, and a space where you're truly seen and supported without judgment. So whether you want personalized guidance or collective energy, the Ignite Momentum Practicum gives you the tools, structure, and support to stop circling the same patterns and start building unstoppable momentum. Ready to take the next step? Schedule your momentum call now at ignitingmomentum.co. That's ignitingmomentum.co. You'll find all the details there. You're not here to shrink, you're here to rise. Welcome back to Rising from the Shadows. I am your host, Marlon Wesh, and today I'm thrilled to bring you another conversation with my guest, Elissa Swihart. Elissa is a mother and survivor of domestic abuse who has turned her pain into advocacy for other victims. Elissa is the founder of Tala's Closet, a free resource providing much needed supplies such as clothing, sanitary supplies, and much more to victims escaping their abuser. Elissa is a living testament that the pain of our past doesn't have to dictate our future. Elissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So today you're a fierce advocate for other women who have experienced domestic violence, and I think it might be perhaps easy for someone standing on the outside to see your confidence as you help survivors tell their stories and your strength as you advocate for women's right to safety. It might be easy to assume that you've always been this way, but the truth is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you talk about, and to your comfort level, of course, what your journey from victim to advocate has been like?
Whew, such a loaded question. So my journey from victim to advocate, I think the thing that I learned the most in abuse was that I have to trust my gut. Because when walking into that abusive relationship, my gut was definitely screaming, wait, something is off. And I ignored it, and I dismissed myself. So after leaving abuse, I had just this inner knowing that I had to focus on myself first, because how could I heal my son if I did not know what healing looked like? And so that first year after leaving, that's what we really just focused on was we both got into therapy through the domestic violence shelter that we used to leave abuse. And we did leave with a laundry basket full of clothes and stayed in the car for a little while. That's why Tala's is something that I know is a gap that needed to be filled. And then I ended up cleaning Airbnbs. And I made a couple of videos about that on my social media about how cleaning Airbnbs is such a great opportunity for those who are starting over and can't afford daycare. So because you can take your kids. I took just a basket of toys every time, would plop them down in front of the TV, and then, away I would go. And that turned into the company that I was cleaning for asking for me to join their customer service team. And so I ended up doing that for about a year. And that's when we got our start over apartment, which was iconic because we lived in a literal castle. My son loved it. And I felt like that was such just a great image overall for my brain and my healing process to be like, wow, like I'm literally royalty in this castle. And as I'm like learning how to love myself. And from there, that was the end of 2020. Um, and the end of the lockdown.
Mhm.
And that's when I really started to find my voice. There were, I started speaking out first and foremost on Black Lives Matter. And I started to realize that some of the people who were actually closest to me were starting to fall away. And that really sucked.
Yeah.
Like, I had to grieve those
Yeah.
relationships. But then I
Yeah.
found, like, I have been so quiet for so long. Like, I do have a voice, and it deserves to be heard because I'm so passionate about these things. However, I never thought that, like, people would agree with me or wanted to hear me.
Yeah.
And then I just had this gut feeling of, like I have to listen to my gut that like abuse was something that I had to start speaking on too. Um, and so I started by telling a story about buying shelves for my son's room in our castle. And how we were starting over with nothing. And I bought the shelves myself and I loaded them into the car myself and I built them myself, and just how empowering that was. And I would post things here and there because I was so scared. I was dipping my toes in,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and then I was voice acting actually because I have a broadcast background.
Okay.
And so after I left abuse there for a hot second, while I was also cleaning Airbnbs because I had 3 jobs at one time, I was recording the morning news on a local radio station.
Wow.
And I walked away from that because we were just reporting on death tolls. It was so sad and depressing, and I was
Yeah.
already going through my own thing, you know.
Right.
Um, and so I got into voice acting because I really missed working behind a microphone and working with my voice. Um, and I ended up getting a part for a domestic violence fundraiser video, like a voiceover in a video.
Wow.
They invited me to the fundraiser because I had shared my background. And then it just became this thing where we formed a relationship. They invited me back to speak at another one of their fundraisers. And that was the first time I ever talked about my story. And this, like, it was for 20 minutes. And I couldn't even talk about abuse itself. I talked about what survivorship looked like for me.
Mhm.
And then it was just like little by little, I started to speak on things more and more. And honestly, I hadn't even told my full story of abuse ever until season 2 on my podcast, Dismissed True Stories, that just ended. Yeah.
Mm.
So it took me 5 years to fully step into that advocacy role.
Wow. If anyone is as human as I am listening on the other end of this, they're probably feeling um, as emotional as I am listening to just a little bit of your story that you're telling. When you talked about cleaning the
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb because you could bring your
Mm-hmm.
son there, that really hit me because um, people don't realize what you have to
Yeah.
do just to get
Mm-hmm.
by. Whether it's going to food pantries like I've done, whether it's, selling off things or what have you. I remember, because I came from a low income
Mm-hmm.
background, and our previous partner came from a upper income, upper middle class
Mm-hmm.
background, to say the least. And so when I decided to leave, we were still sharing our home, and their family was able to get them an apartment
Yeah.
before we actually started, and that like killed,
Hmm.
right? Because I was still in the surroundings around me, and they were able to like get started um, quickly and somewhat seamlessly. And I remember at that time, I live in New England, and Massachusetts is
I was
incredibly
gonna say not
expensive
cheap,
place
that's
to
for
live.
sure. Yeah.
It's not cheap to live. And I knew for one thing, I said, I was like, I am not going to be that guy that has the sad divorced dad apartment with the, the folding chair in front of the TV and the PS2,
Hmm.
It's like I've always been really, really um, um, front and center with caring for my children. And so the idea of me not being able to provide them with something that was comfortable to get into killed me.
Hmm.
Um, but everything started adding up because they were able to get that apartment. It gave me an opportunity to move out of state right across the border to Rhode Island, which is far more accessible for housing. And I was able to get a large place that there's no way I'd be able to afford in Massachusetts. And I remember the first weekend that they were with me here. I had set up their bed and stuff like that, but there were boxes everywhere. And I have a video of my sons walking through the apartment and me feeling like afraid, like that, they're going to feel some type of way because of it. And the excitement on their faces and just going from room to
Hmm.
room and just like, oh my God. And then my oldest, he's obsessed with his younger brother. He's like, he gets to stay in the room with me because that was another thing. I was like, oh, they're gonna have to share a room, blah, blah, blah. And just more like I can't tell you how many times I go into their room. I was like, get out of your brother's bed, go back to your bed. And that feeling of like, oh, we're gonna be all
Like
right,
I did it.
you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And like so that was like my moment of buying the shelves.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
it's powerful.
I was just looking through older pictures last night actually, and I was looking at my a picture that I took of my son's bedroom in our castle apartment. And it's just like, wow. Uh
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did it. That's such just a symbol of freedom and independence
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and safety.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
How did you begin to rebuild your identity after leaving the abusive relationship,
Ooh.
especially when so much is taken from you emotionally?
Um I danced. I when
Okay.
we were cleaning Airbnbs, I actually I didn't have the money for this, but I stumbled upon someone left some old AirPods at well, they left their AirPods at an Airbnb and nobody ever messaged to reclaim them. So then they were mine. And
Mm,
so I would just pop in my pods and I'd be dancing and cleaning and it just felt like I started to shake off all the years of can I say shit? Like all the years
oh
of
yes.
shit that I was carrying while I was with him. It just really reconnected me to myself. I've always been a dancer. I've always loved to dance.
Same. Same.
And I think that it really just brought me back into my body too. Because I have a
That's so important.
tendency to dissociate and to completely leave my body,
Yeah.
and it brought me back in. Hmm.
Yeah. I got a little strobe light off of Amazon, and we'd have dance parties, doing holidays alone.
Hmm.
That was tough. It's like, how can I make this exciting? So we had a New Year's Eve party. I'm Haitian, so New Year's Day is also our Independence
Hmm.
Day. So we played a whole bunch of Haitian music, had the strobe lights going on. We turned off all the lights. And to this day, I mean, they love telling Google to play certain songs. And
Yeah.
so, yes, that activity, that
Hmm.
movement, that definitely, you know, it's like you're moving without care of
Yep.
the perceived eyeballs on
Yep.
you, right?
Exactly. It
Um,
felt so good.
what belief, yes, what beliefs did you have to let go of in order to step into the version of yourself you are today?
Oh, um, there's a lot of things that I don't know that I've fully let go of, that I'm still working on. Um, I think the first is that I am allowed to take up space. I think that maybe
Yeah.
I may show up as confident on screen, but there's a lot that I fight through mentally, um, to be able to do that. There,
But the fact that you're fighting
mhm.
through it is the win.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for that. Um,
If this podcast speaks to you, if you're on the path of healing, reclaiming your voice, or just trying to piece together who you really are after surviving the unthinkable, I want to invite you into a space where you don't have to do it alone. Join our Facebook group created for survivors, cycle breakers, and people rebuilding themselves from the inside out. In there, we go deeper. Weekly prompts, live streams, raw conversations, and a whole lot of people who just get it. No pretending, no pressure, just truth, growth, and community. Search Rising from the Shadows, The Path to Reclaiming You on Facebook, or hit the link in the show notes to join the community.
the other thing is that um, one of the things that he attacked first and probably the hardest throughout our entire relationship was my personality and the way that I speak. And I know that was because my career was something that meant a lot to me. And when we first started dating, I had my own night show on the radio, just a party show. And I'd worked really, really hard to get there. And so now that is still one of the what I'm constantly overthinking when I'm speaking,
Yeah.
because it's definitely still there no matter how much I try to work through or talk through
Yeah.
that with myself. It's
Yeah.
definitely.
Because it's your light. And because that's your light. It's obviously your
Mhm.
light. And they need something to
Yeah.
diminish. Um I've always been an extremely creative person, and I remember um our first Valentine's Day together. I like wrote a poem and a love song, and it made them incredibly uncomfortable, I
Mhm.
guess. I never wrote a song since then, and I used to like write songs. Uh, the church that I used to attend as a kid, we would have like an annual Christmas play, and I like composed music for the entire play. And those was things that I did all the time, and I just stopped.
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
stopped. Because it felt, like, oh, me, I'm this weird homeschool kid,
Yeah.
awkward guy or whatever. Let me try to do
Mhm.
normal, cool things, whatever that may be. Um, I uh make the comparison between somebody who's had a limb amputated and um no one would tell that person is like, hey, run a marathon on that limb that was amputated. I'm not talking about prosthetics or anything, just like run it on the limb that's not there. But we often do that with people that have suffered, traumatic events or that are struggling with PTSD. And, for some of these things, for some people, it completely gets better. But I think for most of us, it doesn't get completely better. Maybe the best that it can get is the knowledge that, oh, this is coming
Yeah.
up. And now I can, do something about it. How do you deal with triggers or moments when the past resurfaces? What's in your emotional toolkit
Ugh.
today?
Dang, that's such a good question. One thing, so I'm actually in a season right now that my fiance and I call flashback season. And it's just where I experience the worst thing that happened to me in that relationship through flashbacks and
That's so
panic
wild.
attacks.
I'm October to March.
Are you? Mine
Hmm.
is the end of August to October. And
Interesting.
yeah, I've had to. that in and of itself, that season, like when it first started, because it didn't start immediately after I left. It actually started 2 years after I left. And my therapist is always like, well, that's because you finally got into a place where you felt safe enough to
Yes.
start remembering.
Yep.
Um, but as far as like my toolkit for that, I a non-negotiable for me is every Wednesday night is a self-care night. And my fiance knows this, and he helps, like, him and my son have a dudes night, they call it, where they play like Fortnite or Rocket League together, while I sit in a bath with my noise canceling headphones and I like read a book or listen to music or just decompress, because I am very much the type of person that I need my time to be alone
Mm.
with me to recharge. Um, and also, I have to get out in nature. I can't ignore that
Yeah.
piece. Like, that was
Yeah.
something, walking on a trail down the road from my house every morning was something that I don't know what it is about deer and bunnies, but like they were so magical to me, and it was honestly one of the reasons that I was getting out of bed during one of the hardest seasons. When I first started having
Wow.
those flashbacks, like, I just want to go say good morning to the deer, which is so small, but it was
No,
everything to
it's
me.
so big.
Mm-hmm.
I had my old office. There was a little man-made pond by there in a walking
Mm-hmm.
trail. And before, more than a year before I decided to leave, I that's where like I met myself. Going for walks around there. There was a picnic table that looked over
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm a cigar smoker. I would smoke my cigars there and think, and I bring my journal out there and journal. Um, you're right. There's something about nature that brings clarity and that heals the soul. I just went on a 2-hour hike with my dog on Saturday, and that was just
Mm-hmm.
amazing. It's just, um, yeah, yeah. You talk on your platform about how abuse begins way before anything physical happens, and it happens first through fear and intimidation tactics. Can you share more about
Yeah.
that?
Um, I've said this too on my platform, but fear is a weapon that they utilize early and frequently, and it's part of their grooming process, to make you feel like you are stuck. Because first comes
Hmm.
love bombing, where you feel like, oh my gosh, this is the one. I've never felt this way
Hmm.
before. I'm head over
Hmm.
heels, and then they start to confuse you. And in the confusion comes, step two, whether they realize they're doing this or not, is isolation. And
Yes.
they cannot isolate you without some sort of confusion and fear. Um, so for me, it looked like telling me that, basically, like, my family is worthless. And if we would go hang out with friends, he would tell me on the way over there, like, don't speak because you embarrass me. And
Jesus.
that would make he would be yelling at me, screaming at me in the car. And that's intimidating, because I've never been told not to speak because I'm embarrassing before. And I remember thinking, well, wait, like, I just got paid for
Yeah,
however
speaking is
many
my thing.
years. Exactly. Like, how does this, like, make this make sense? And then those sort of intimidation tactics turned into punching holes in the wall, near me, but not directly at me. And then it would be a converse.
Restraint.
Exactly. It would be a conversation of like,
Mm.
well, I didn't hit you. Or hitting me with objects, not necessarily his hand. I was like whipped with wet towels. And these were things that I somehow was able to justify as not abuse, because society teaches you that physical abuse is black eyes and getting punched in the
Yeah.
face, or something along those lines. Um, and so once they, I don't know, it's kind of like they tenderize you with intimidation tactics. They groom you to accept this sort of behavior. And because it's confusing, then down the
Mhm.
line, they just ramp it up.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
leads to physical abuse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, that is my rule now. If I'm confused, it means no.
Mm-hmm.
Period. It just means
That's a
no.
really good rule.
Because yeah, it's like you assume people have best intentions, and that's all good and well, but like we're pretty smart people. Like, there's no reason for us to be confused. If it's confused, it's on
Yeah.
purpose. If it's confusing, it's on purpose. And you're right about that. Not only in the middle of the altercations and where there's that valley where there's a kind of a
Mm-hmm.
lull, those periods get shorter and
Absolutely.
shorter and shorter and shorter until it, maybe it used to be every 9 months. Now it's every 6 months. Now every 3 months. Now it's every
Mm-hmm.
month. Now it's every other week. Now it's every week. Now it's every day. And because it's just like so incremental, it doesn't feel like it's changed from 9 months between altercations versus
Mm-hmm.
daily. Because of that, what, where do you think the system fails most survivors of DV, and what do you believe needs to change?
Oh, well, so much needs to change. The system is so incredibly broken. Court, for sure. Um, and I know there are systems changing. But I do wish more than anything before the separation, before the court process, I wish, and there are a couple of states that have passed high lethality legislation, like Florida was one of them. I know the Petitos were a large reason for that,
Mhm.
where first responders are taught to give this high lethality risk assessment on domestic violence calls. And if you
Mhm.
fall into that, then, these first responders act accordingly. However, there could be certain situations in that, like, I wish that this was something that was taught in schools, that people would know
Mhm.
how to look out for the warning signs. And this isn't just like a first responder issue. This is
Yeah.
a societal issue where we're not taught, we don't understand. Even me as a survivor, I thought that abuse was one thing while I was
Right.
experiencing a whole other thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I wish that it was something that wasn't so damn taboo, because then we could
Yeah.
actually talk about it, and it wouldn't make us stay for as long as we do. Um, and now, like, whew, I could open another whole can of worm talking about how, like, there's so many nonprofits who are losing funding and grants and all the things because of the current legislation. There's so
Yeah.
many things that are
Yeah.
broken. Um, so many things that need to be
And that's by
changed. It's
design.
absolutely
That's
by
by
design.
design. You said that you wish you knew like what abuse was. So like I was horrifically physically abused as a child. So that was my benchmark, right? I was never hit. I'm a man in a heterosexual relationship. Like I wasn't hit by my partner. So I'm not getting abused, right? Right? Like that's it. I think what's interesting, I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
UK, um, where they've done a lot of work on coercive control,
Yes.
because that's the beginning stages that nobody
Mm-hmm.
understands, right? That's the whole like, why didn't you leave? Like, you don't get what coercive control is. It like no one starts abuse with just like bam, like that doesn't
Hi, it's our
happen,
first date. I'm going to punch you later. Like, it
right?
doesn't it
Like this,
doesn't work like that. Yeah.
and the fact of the matter is coercive abuse in every aspect of our lives. It happens at work. It
Hmm.
happens in our romantic relationships. It happens in our family
Yep.
relationships. It happens with
Hmm.
friends. It happens in our religious
Yep.
spaces. Coercive control is a huge, huge issue, and I feel like it's almost not so much the uh, physical abuse or what have you. That's the taboo part. I think it's the coercive
Yeah.
control part, because people don't want to admit how prevalent it is in every aspect of our society. Um, I just had a conversation with Dr. Cochiola. She's a professor at NYU, and this is her space, coercive control specifically. She has an institute that deals with that, and as you said, it's just like much needed
Yeah.
education, right? Any first responder can see like, oh, you have bruises on you.
It's
You
the
know, let's
preventative
let
measures that were
is the
severely
preventative
lacking.
measure.
I mean, I know in school I was shown one video on domestic violence, and the entire time I was watching it, I was annoyed because I was thinking I am way too smart to ever end up
Right,
in a
right,
situation like this.
right,
And boy, they
right.
really do just creep in. I mean, he
I mean, we're talking about trained psychologists that find themselves
yeah.
in these situations.
Yes. Yes.
Doctorate degree
Absolutely.
psychologists.
Absolutely. It is
That's how insidious
sneaky.
it is.
It is so sneaky.
Yeah.
I mean, he drove 6 hours to surprise me at the radio station after a shift with a bouquet of flowers and my favorite chocolate. Did I ever think that that person who put that much
Right.
effort into my relationship would end up being the person who broke my ribs and my spirit? No,
No.
no. Hmm.
What do you think is most overlooked or misunderstood about the needs of victims escaping DV?
The most overlooked, you said?
Yes, or misunderstood.
Um, I think there's a lot of discourse around this already. Um, but the pipeline from like why didn't she just leave to oh my god get over it already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've had people actually say that not directly to me but to my fiance and our relationship, like why is she still playing the victim when in fact you were just severely uneducated into what PTSD is. And I don't have a
Yeah,
choice when my body chooses to react in a certain way. I do have a
yeah.
choice after a panic attack has subsided to take care of myself in a certain way. But
Hmm.
other than that, like I gotta ride the wave until it's over, and it's not that's not fair because I had to
Yeah,
fight every single day in that abusive relationship to say like I'm a person who is worth something to come out of the relationship and try to heal myself and then to turn around and try to educate others and simply just exist from the residuals of an abusive relationship to have to fight to say wait, I'm a person that is worth something and you don't get to
yeah,
have an uneducated opinion. That is so hurtful. Hmm.
yeah. You had mentioned earlier in the conversation about how during the pandemic you started to speak out about Black Lives Matter,
Hmm.
and a lot of people fell on the wayside. That was definitely the case for me. When I left my parents' home, there was this wonderful family that became my chosen family from our faith group, and I grew up with their little girls. I think their youngest, oh, wasn't even born yet when I met them. She was pregnant with her, and I watched them, graduate high school and all these things. And at one point, I lived in their basement while I was trying to get on my
Oh.
feet. We did everything together. And they fell into the MAGA pipeline, and it became really disheartening to feel unseen, that like, wait a minute, I'm like this black guy in America, like how can you be saying these
Hmm.
things and then
embrace me? Like, how do you not see that's a contradiction? And there was this one um, experience where we were we were at the grocery store, or we're talking about the grocery store, and they were saying that, um, they were going to shop at Wegmans, and they saw these people that look like Muslims or whatever taking pictures of the store.
If you're listening to this and you've got a story to tell, whether it's your personal story of healing and reclaiming your voice or rising from rock bottom, or you're a professional with powerful insight into trauma, identity, resilience, or transformation, then I want to hear from you. Rising from the Shadows is more than just a podcast. It's a space where truth is honored, power is reclaimed, and stories heal. If you have something to share that could empower others to stop shrinking and start rising, I'd love for you to apply to be a guest on the show. Just head to tellmystory.risingfromtheshadows.com to submit your application. Let's rise together, one voice, one breakthrough, one story at a time.
Or like taking pictures of themselves with a store, and in their mind they thought the store was being cased out by these terrorists in an uber affluent area, north of Philadelphia. Like, get out of
Mm-mm.
here. Uh which honestly, they probably were Indian, because it was like a high-tech area, and they just whatever, and they called the police. And I
They
was
called the
like,
police.
yeah. And they didn't stay, to see anything happen. They just did their civic duty. Um, and I knew I had to make a choice. Like, I can't. And so before I even left my abusive situation, I was no longer in
Mm-hmm.
contact with them. Um, and so then when I left, I was like, I have no one to go to. They would have been my people to be there for me. That was extremely difficult. Um, Recently, I have blocked on all my socials, either people that were abusers or enablers. And I created a new Instagram account to because I cook. I like to throw dinner parties, and I was thinking, like, I would like to start using that to fundraise. I have this idea about an organization that will help um, parents to pay for housing and childcare, and also be able to utilize food resources in a way that is not embarrassing, right? Like, because I
Mm-hmm.
remembered, like, in a big open spot, going to the food pantry, and it's like everyone can hear as they're asking you the
Yeah.
questions as they take down the stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. I was like, what if you like purchased or rented a small grocery store that's no longer, they left the lease or whatever, and literally set it up just like a grocery store, right? So if there are toy donations or what have you, there's an aisle for that with actual shelves, that the kids can be like, oh, mommy, daddy, I want this, and you can be like, okay, go grab it, put it in my cart, and go out to
Yeah.
the cash
Mm-hmm.
register, which essentially would just be like sign inside out inventory thing with like a card that looks like you're purchasing it,
Mm-hmm.
and so the idea that I'm working on is called Project Dignity.
I
So
love
anyway,
that.
um
Let me know how Dignity and Tala's Closet can collaborate in the future.
okay, we're in the early
Okay.
stages, but so I opened this account, and it popped up all these suggested accounts to follow. And of course my curiosity got the best of me. And I one of the suggested accounts was my former partner, and I saw on one of their posts a comment from um, the wife of that family, leaving an encouraging, like, oh, I'm so happy for you, blah blah blah. And it's like, damn, she got to them too. And it's just the grief that just
Mm-hmm.
continues. And it's just unavoidable that as you step into your new life, like
People
things.
Yeah.
fall off.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to close doors in other areas of your life. Like you cannot be expectant of yourself to grow and not outgrow your environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's I'm I'm interested though. How old were you when you left your Haitian family?
So so the first time I was
Okay.
17, and I remember, and I tell this on the early episodes of my podcast, and I remember my dad was like, "Hey, why didn't you clean your room?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I wasted my time and I didn't get to it." And he like told me to find something in the backyard to like beat me with, and this is normal life. So I'm like, "Yeah." So I'm going in the backyard
Mm-mm.
to do this. I was right before
Mm-hmm.
bedtime. I had my pajamas on, and I'm in the backyard. There was like a not a tree line, but like a bush line between us and the neighbors. And I was like finding something, and I was like, wait a minute, this is so bizarre. Like I'm 17 years old and I'm like finding something to beat myself, get beaten with. So I quietly went back inside, put on my sneakers, and I started running. And this happened in like September, October time. I remember it was a full moon, and I like looked up and I remember just breathing a prayer to like help. And I started running, and I ran to the Walmart around the corner. Um, an associate like must have saw my face, like put me in a back room and gave me quarters to for the payphone, to call the police, and they did. They came, but of course, because he didn't hit me yet, there was like nothing. Plus, I'm black, right? It's like a little harder to see all
Mm-hmm.
these bruises and stuff like
Damn.
that. And if to your point, um, they would have made me go back with him
Mm-hmm.
if my brother, who had already emancipated himself, hadn't shown up because I called him too. Because then it wasn't kidnapping, right? Like I'm staying at my brother's house. So they let me go with my brother that night. But and then I eventually um, got a social worker. I'll never forget his name, Gerald Summers. Um, and he had a frank conversation with me and say, like, look, if this goes through the courts process and they um, find cause to separate you from your parents, you have your younger brother that's still at home. There's a good chance that they would take him too, and if he's in the system, that you wouldn't
Yeah.
know where to find him. So I went back until I turned 18, and I left
Mm,
again. Yeah.
damn.
So I had been with these people. I mean, I'd known them since I was 14, at church, and we grew closer and closer together. And I mean, they were very angelic for me. I mean, they really did save my life. So the grief is like
Yeah,
really
I
high on
understand
that, like really,
the
yeah,
grief aspect. Yeah,
yeah,
I get that. I'm
yeah.
so sorry. That sucks so much.
Thank
I
you,
know that
thank you.
you're
Yeah,
not alone in that. There's so many people, and
yeah,
children
yeah.
who have emancipated themselves from their MAGA families. Hmm.
Yes, yes. How do you find community afterwards?
Um, this is something that is so important to me. You'll often hear me on my podcast say healing happens in community.
Mhm.
When I started having flashbacks, it put me into the deepest depression I've ever been in.
Yeah.
I got to a point where like I didn't feel like I could trust myself. I didn't feel like I could trust my brain. Like, how am I seeing something that I literally don't remember happening at all? That's so
Mhm.
confusing. Um, and I would sit and write just pages and pages of everything that was in here, and a lot of it was, um, well, how do I help other people, knowing damn well that I needed help myself.
Mhm.
And I ended up, I don't even remember how this happened, but I had met another woman a couple of years prior at a fundraiser fashion show. And she was just like this very outgoing white lady with a pink mohawk, just came up and started talking to me, and it was so loving. And she ended up like saying something to me on Snapchat, I think. Just randomly, and there's this thing that I call a superpower, but like once you've been through abuse, you can almost clock the other people who have been through it too without them
Yes.
having to say
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
Um
You know your
yeah,
people.
and so I ended up just asking her like, "Hey, I get this vibe from you, are you?" And she said yes. And so we ended up talking about what healing looks like for the both of us. And I found out through her that everything that I was feeling, I wasn't alone in feeling. And
Yeah.
that validation was everything I needed to crawl up out of that hole of depression
Yeah.
and really start trying to find community and other survivors. So now I'm surrounded by a big community of survivors, and that's
That's
most of
amazing.
my friends. I would say
Yeah.
probably about
And
80% of my friends.
this is like the other so important reason that you have to tell your story, because the isolation is really what
Hmm.
gets you. Um, Tell me about
Oh
Tala's
my
closet.
gosh. Oh, Tala. Today is her birthday. Actually, she would have been 23.
Really? No.
And so through the community center that I opened Tala's closet in, they are owned by a church. The pastor had
Uh, can you first talk a little about who Tala
yeah.
was?
Um Tala was a victim of domestic violence who unfortunately lost her life in 2024. And she did not pass away from the abuse that was done to her. She was actually on life support for 6 days before her mother had to decide to take her off of it due to no brain activity and constant seizures. Um, yeah, she died at the age of 21. And I actually ended up finding her story through a vigil that I put on at the community center where I ended up opening Tala's closet, because that pastor that of the church that owns that community center had contacted me and said, "Hey, um, I'm seeing this gap in our community where there's no resources. And growing up in a community like this, I know that domestic violence was pretty prevalent. And so I'm wondering if you can help." And so I said, yeah, absolutely. We ended up opening a resource corner in that community center, and then hosting a vigil to the lives for the lives lost. And Tala happened to be one of the lives lost. I I've always wanted to, like, the whole reason that I started Dismiss True Stories was because I found a story doing research for another vigil in Michigan of a life lost to domestic violence. And I'd done all the research. I found this victim's family, and I just couldn't get myself to contact them. I was way too scared. And so it was like a year later, here's Tala's story really hitting me in the feels and affecting me. So I decided to reach out to her mother. I invite her to the vigil. I ask if she would be interested in telling her daughter's story on Dismiss True Stories. And she was kind of upset with me, and she told me no. I get it. Like, I don't feel any type of way.
Mhm.
I get it. But then after the vigil, I ended up sending her some pictures. She didn't come. She lives in Texas. So she started listening to the podcast and got a hold of me in January and said, "I've changed my mind. I've been listening. I've been watching your work, and I would be absolutely honored if you would tell Tala's story." So her and I have been interviewing since February about Tala. And in one of the
Wow.
interviews, she had mentioned that Tala's favorite movie is Robots.
Oh,
And in that movie, they reference see a need, fill a need, which is the mission of
yeah.
Talos. Um, and this is insane. This story is insane. I talked to you about walking on that trail where I was like, I just wanted to say good morning to the deer and to the bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I had sent out a prayer where I was like, if I am heading in the right direction, can you please show me a bunny? But not just a bunny in the wild. Show me a bunny in some completely wacky way that I would never expect it. So after our first, Connie is Tala's mom's name, after our first interview, she ends up sending me some of Tala's artwork. And the first picture, her favorite picture of Tala's, she sends me is a self-portrait of Tala in the living room with a picture hanging on the wall of a bunny in the background.
No.
And so sometimes you'll see Tala's logos with a bunny just here and there. They're just like little Easter eggs. We definitely have bunnies all around Tala's closet in Buckeye Lake, Ohio. But that was my first, like, holy cow, I cannot ignore this. I know I'm headed in the right direction. And so I ended up contacting Connie again and said, hey, I've wanted to do this thing for a very long time. And I know there's a place actually where Tala lived and died that has just an empty room. They're not doing anything with it. What if we opened up a free store for domestic violence victims and their children? And what if we named it after Tala? And Connie broke down in tears and was like, oh my God, absolutely. Tala would love this. And so we worked for 6 months, just really grinding, networking and making those connections to make Tala's Closet possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah. It was really like one of
wow.
those things that it's like you can't ignore it. Like, this is absolutely where I'm supposed to be, and this is absolutely what's supposed to be happening right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing Tala's story and sharing your story. I know our listeners are going to walk away with so much inspiration and insight. Where can listeners connect with you, learn more about your work, and support your mission?
Yes, I am on TikTok and Instagram. TikTok at the DV Survivor, and at Instagram at the DV Survivor Sisterhood. I do cross post on either one of those. Sometimes there's different videos on each one, but I do have a link in each one of those bios where you can donate to Tala's. You can also listen to my podcast, and I haven't been able to release any of Tala's stories so far just because we're still pending trial, which is supposed to happen next month in October. So after trial, I will finally be able to bring the world Tala's story.
Okay. And of course, we'll put those resources in the show notes. Thank you again so much for sharing with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this very sobering episode of Rising from the Shadows. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. And if you can go on any platform that you listen to your podcasts on, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. I greatly appreciate that. And of course, as always, remember that healing isn't the absence of shadows. It's learning to thrive in your own light. So rise today, rise tomorrow, rise always, because the shadows doesn't stand a chance. Take care.
If you're an event organizer, HR leader, or educator looking to bring a powerful voice to your stage, someone who speaks truth, ignites momentum, and empowers your audience to rise above what's held them back, then I want to talk to you. My keynote, Rising from the Shadows, is more than a talk. It's a transformative experience that shows people how to stop shrinking, start healing, and stand fully in their story. I've lived it, I teach it, I walk people through it. So if you're building a lineup of speakers who don't just talk but move people, head over to marlonwesh.com to create something unforgettable for your audience.